Susan, you want to say something?
Just a quick comment. Obviously, I come from a very kind of gender perspective, and of course, we like to believe that those with the education and the skills and the training do get to the top. That's patently not the case for women. And so, of course, obviously, all of our research is looking at what is it that's preventing women from getting to the top. And it is very largely around social capital, not human capital. I heard a very interesting story on Thursday where a big part of Swiss Re decided to put all its jobs up in the air at middle and senior levels, and they re-interviewed to kind of try and ensure that there was no bias, or try to eliminate as much bias as possible. And the percentage of women in top management moved from 17 to 40%, and that was existing management. So, yes, I totally agree with you, but that isn't just the answer for women.
But then you were saying one of the practical next steps is put more women into senior management positions. I'm looking.
Yes, you have to get them there. You have to get mainly males at the top to understand how they select and how biased they are, and that they don't select on human capital. That's my point.
Should I one more and then Woody?
Thank you. Nick Engineer, I'm the Commercial and Membership Director of the Management Consultancies Association. If I think about what our members sort of say they do, and it's very interesting to hear the Academy say, the voice of your industry. We say the same thing, of course. And our members talk about three things. It's about better leaders, better decisions, and better delivery. And I think that's quite a nice way of thinking about actually what management consultants are really trying to do, whatever their range of specialisms. But I'd be really interested on the panel's perception and the panel's view on how management consultants fit into a lot of what's been said, whether it's about improving management, whether it's about women and diversity and increasing diversity in the broadest possible sense within companies. So I'd just be really interested on the panel's view on that.
Thanks. I will say one thing quickly without trying to knowledge it. One thing that has worked, and one small aspect of what management consultants have and could do is a lot of the research we showed today was just looking at correlations. So management is correlated with multinationals, with ownership, with performance. That's not causation. We're trying to get to the causation aspect. So a research team from the LSE in Stanford worked with Accenture on the ground in India across 20 textile firms in Mumbai, putting in very basic, take the survey, pre-implementation, have a control group, have the group be worked in, put these practices in place. So an 18% productivity improvement over 18 months, and just putting these basic practices in place. We think that could translate to the UK context. So subsidized consulting on practices and processes, staying away from leadership, staying away from strategy, and on this side, staying away from more hard technologies to come in. Just kind of on the ground consulting for, again, these SME industries. That's something that could probably have a practical impact. And they're actually probably working to doing that in Ireland as well. So that's one way, that a practical implementation.
Julian?
Yeah, yes. So management consultancies, in some ways, are one of the vehicles by which academic research finds its way into practice, right? And you as an industry are far more hungry, if you like, to figure out what we're doing than most actual companies that produce products and services for the population. But let me make an obvious point, which is when it works well, management consultancy is about taking those insights, actually professionalizing the companies to some degree that they are having as their clients, and helping them to do their jobs better. As long as they kind of leave the skills there. Obviously, when it doesn't work, is where the consultancy essentially outsources the activity and takes it on for itself, and in some way sort of denudes the company that it is working with. So I think that's when it works well. The other issue of management consultancy gets back to the earlier point, which is that many SMEs, many small medium-sized enterprises simply can't afford management consultancy, and they're of course the ones, as we've already said, who in some ways are the laggards, are the ones you've got to bring up. So you don't need a whole lot more help in GSK or Rolls-Royce for management consultancy, but you do need it for the companies that are at the bottom of that list that Rebecca's.
Rajesh, I thought you...
I'll add one more point to this, the importance of management consultancy in making all of this change happen. I was at the University of Michigan attending one of these seminars out there. It was a longish one, wherein the concept which was brought forward was that the world is moving towards what we call as N is equals to 1 and then R is equals to G, which means every individual is a customer or a consumer in whichever, whatever he does and whatever he buys. In order for the firm to make that happen, the resources have to become global. So we are no more living in a society where one integrated company can make everything and possibly give it to that consumer. So management research comes in here which says N is equals to 1, but resources is equals to global, which means take it from wherever it is done best in order for you to thrive in that business.
Can I just add another quick point? I mean, I think it can work very well together, management consultancy. My experience in the Women on Board and Diversity on Board space is that they too quickly want to look for a solution. Now, academics may be a bit too hesitant about saying how they interpret their data. And I'll give you a good example. Last September, I was in Washington, and McKinsey gave this elaborate one-hour presentation on how having women on their corporate board causes higher profitability. Well, Cranfield abandoned that argument 6 years ago because it doesn't make any sense. Just think about it intuitively. You've got to operate at the common sense level. It doesn't make sense. So my concern is sometimes consultants look too quickly for solutions.
Sorry, just what doesn't make sense?
Well, it didn't make sense to say that women on board lead to higher profits and higher return on investment, return on equity. That is something that we have tried to inculcate this argument about. It's much more, there's a much more compelling, comprehensive business case, but that's around managing talent, the changing marketplace, reputation of choice to young women. It's not about higher profits and return on investment.
Any other questions? Yeah, Woody.
Woody Khan is on, is it?
Yes.
Woody Khan, Royal Society for Public Health, and I should declare an interest. We had a family firm in medical devices. I worked in the pharmaceutical divisions at the British Technology Group in the past, and I worked about half my life in the NHS. So 3 very different bits of the health sector. Rebecca, you inspired the question with your histograms about degrees in both managers and employees, and where successful firms have a parallel increase in education in both. We also talked about recruiting the right people, and Ian mentioned the key countries of Sweden and Singapore, countries with much more social mobility than Britain has at the moment. Now, successful organizations, even dreadful organizations like the military, who I'm trying to work with at the moment, recognize that diversity in personality and background, as well as gender, is crucial. Royal Navy is very keen on women, incidentally, and the Royal Air Force. But the crucial thing is background. You want people with very different passions, interests, experiences. And what I'm seeing in the 3 sectors I mentioned is a fossilization, where the people look the same year after year. Bjorn Furley is here. We've talked about rounding up the usual suspects. And even if they employ women, guess what? Their dads worked for the same firm and speak with the same accent and went to the same school. After World War II, my uncle Bill was head of the Michigan Business School. And there was a huge push, particularly with returning veterans on both sides of the Atlantic, for example, to employ disabled veterans that we don't employ in Britain now. A huge push to have a diverse workforce. Give anyone a chance who's willing to work hard enough. That was the slogan of what the Michigan Business School called Sure Sleeve Economics. If you focus on what you're doing, you know what product you want to produce, anyone can get to the top. Why has Britain lost that value in diversity? And can we get it back?
Can we do this quick? Because the Secretary of State just arrived. If you want to have a date on within that ultimately, we're going to have to. Just a quick set of response. Ian, you were going to say something?
I mean, that could take 3 days. I mean, the idea
Yeah,
of
I mean,
social
it could take.
one of the things that worries me, and I think Vince is of the same opinion, is we do have fossilization, and despite all the progress that's been made, a person where you're born, your postcode, is still the biggest indicator of life chances, life expectancy, health, and everything. It's a disgrace, and how you break that. One of the things that I'm really interested in, though, is, and this flies in the face of what Rebecca and others were saying, actually, and I'd be interested in their views, is are we too obsessed in this country with academic success? That an academic does equate to success, so that somehow vocational or practical skills are somehow a second-class achievement or failure. Why can't we have parity of steam when it comes to apprenticeships? To have people coming in, having an apprenticeship, but being fast-tracked to become CEO of the company in some way. I think and we've never had parity of steam. The nature of the class system in this country meant that the education system drove that sort of embedding of social immobility. But if we had parity of steam with different qualifications, like we see in other places, I think social mobility would be assisted a great deal.
And
Thanks.
IF is working on that.
Yes.
Can we thank the panel? Thank you very much.